Hello. In today's video, I'm going to go over the role of choice scarf and more in general revenge killers on a team and hopefully teach you something about how you can maximize your scarfer's utility, which a lot of people seem to struggle with. As in, they will look at a team and say, okay, I want a choice scarf user, understandable, and yet they often fail to pick the proper one, or they just don't put a lot of thought into it, which I think is pretty weird. Or just think something like, oh, I'm weak to, I don't know, Volcarona, so I'm going to slap a Garchomp on this one and then call it a day. Which, I mean, you can do that certainly, but probably not always the best idea. And I'm on the sample Steam page because I think these a lot of these at least have pretty much optimal ideas for what you should scarf to revenge kill stuff. Right. So first thing first, choice scarf. I'm going to assume everyone here knows what choice scarf is, right? And so why, like, what do people really need to know when using choice scarf? Well, of course, it's a massive momentum sink, but on the other hand, it gives you a way to not instantly lose to speed boosting threats and in general faster stuff. But obviously, it locks you, so that's why a lot of the most popular scarfers have ways to ignore the fact that they will lock themselves, or if they do, they lock themselves into such a powerful move that your opponent still has to respond to them like very fast. And so, for example, let's give it a quick look. I'm going to start with the basic sample, the first sample team, which is I think is it's a good example. Okay, so this one does not have a scarfer, but it does have a dedicated revenge killer in Sash Zam, which is more than fine as a revenge killer. This one does not die in one hit ever with Sasha because of Magic Guard. So, well, technically, you could make a case that multi-hit moves would kill Akazam in one hit, but there's about zero used multi-hit moves right now, so you're fine. Alright, so when you have a team like this and you want a revenge killer, you have several options. You have three options, in fact. And the first one, obviously, is to run Sash on Alakazam. The second one is to run Scarf on Landorus Therian. And the last one would be to run Choice Scarf on Latios. And in fact, going back for a moment to sample teams, if we choose to instead load the second sample team, and put it in our builder, we will see that this team instead opted for Choice Scarf Latios. Probably Scarf Landorus is not the best idea here, but every single sample team has ways to revenge kill stuff, and some don't, and also not every Scarf mon is really a revenge killer in the pure sense of the word. I mean, they will do revenge killing to a point, but each mon has its own quirks and pros and cons when you scarf it, and so picking the right one is what truly matters. And if you look, for example, like if when you're picking a choice scarf user for your team, you can just say, "Oh, I really like choice scarf Landorus," which I mean, fair enough, but do you want a scarf Landorus when unlock Landorus is such a menace? And sure, you can make the same case for just about every other mon. Say Latios himself, Scarf Latios is fine, good even, but it does feel bad sometimes in some matchups. or Sashing Alakazam when you know that Life Orb Zam is a massive menace. Or even, I don't know, look at this team. Sun number three. Escadrille is a Scarfer on this team, which is okay. But then you have kind of a middling speed Scarfer, so late game against an opposing Scarfer that's faster than Escadrille, it can get quite tricky when you run this. Say you're late game against a Choice Scarf Landorus Therian, right? And your Escadrille will not be as effective because it's a bit too slow compared to Landorus, and obviously Latios will also clean up if you're relying on Choice Scarf Escadrille late game. Some teams just don't load Scarfers, but they do have Revenge Killers. Okay, this sample team though, that's not it, because I believe this one has Scarf Garchomp. But if you look, say, at Smurf, you're like, oh yeah, hyper offense. I don't necessarily need to run Choice Scarfers. That's true, but that's because this team has three super strong priority moves, and so obviously they can afford not to. Whereas other styles, more modern hyper offense styles, do still run a Choice Scarfmon, like this one, or Hail Drag Spam, or well, all the other sample teams really. And yeah, it kind of depends on what you have here. Rain always has a Scarfmon as well. This might be the only style where you're forced to run a Choice Scarf user. Sun and Hyper Offense, you can get away without one, but in Rain case, you absolutely need one. But that's okay because you have Rain, so you can get some nice bonuses of that. Okay, so now back to the how do you pick your Scarfer, or at least what makes a Scarfer good? What does it mean to run Choice Scarf on a Pokemon? And how do you pick which one to run? And the most popular ones at the moment are Landus, Therian, Excadrill. Latios fell off a little bit, but it's still in a couple of samples, so there's no reason to not include it. And Garchomp, nobody really runs this, so probably not, although it is a pretty good Scarfer. Keldeo, obviously, in Rain, and Jirachi, probably the most common one. These five are the 5 months you will see Scarfed most often, and there are a couple fringe ones, but let's focus on these ones. Right, so Landorus, it fell off for a bit as a Scarfer when people favor the typical leftovers, uh, 3 moves plus rocks, which is great, and then nowadays where we see a little bit more of especially defensive Landorus, Scarf has started to drop a little bit in usage, but it's still very potent, and so you should definitely respect this. The great thing about Scarf Landorus, it's U-turn, very strong U-turn, also very powerful Earthquake. Plays great with sand. Ice can help you revenge kill a Garchomp or Dragonite if things go south. And you still retain Intimidate, and you can still switch into a couple of things, at least once or twice. Obviously, you lose the flexibility of switching moves, and most importantly, you lose leftovers, which means you have to play this guy a lot more carefully than if you had leftovers on it. Still, decent inclusion on as a Scarfer, probably best when you have strong psychic type switchings, and also you have decent ways of not getting rolled over by a Choiceman Terrakion. And so you will see this mostly in teams like not these ones. I don't know if there's a sample team with Scarflandrus. Give it a quick look. Mm, not that I know. Maybe this one actually. Copy link. And we go back to this and import it. I don't know. But I think this one is Scarlando. Yeah. So why does it work here and maybe and probably not on these other sample teams? Well, of course, the supporting cast is completely different. So you have Life or Garchomp, who is amazing at opening up walls to make Landorus more threatening. Think an opposing Landorus, for example, and also gets rocks up. Scarflando has to trade off the fact that you're Scarf, so you really don't want to run rocks on this, or if you do, which is fine, but it will be your secondary Scarfer. I mean, Rocker, sorry. And so you want this on slightly more offensive some teams, like this one, like this sample teams is super offensive. There's about 400 defensive EVs on the entire team, and 250 of these are on Tyranitar. Actually, way more, right? You have like 450 defensive EVs on Tyranitar, and then what, 36 and 96. Yeah, this team is very aggressive. And so Scarfando makes sense there. You can gain a lot of momentum, and the idea of switching in, only being able to switch in once or twice is fine here. Because again, you're playing a very fast tempo game with this kind of setup. Whereas if you were running, oops, if you were running something like these other samples, these teams are slightly slower overall. You want to play a bit around your Volt turn and get spikes up, Brox, of course, and then end up open up things with Latios and close the game with Zam, or the other way around, depending on how the game is going. Same goes with this other sample team. You want rocks and or spikes, and then deal damage with Keldeo, and then eventually clean up with Latios. Scarfing Landros here would give you two issues. One, you lose rocks on the best Pokemon who can run rocks on this. I mean, Ferrothorn is a fine rocker, but you want spikes, right? You have two psychics. And as for the same goes for this one, like same exact idea. You really need both rocks and spikes, and if you Scarf Landros, you kind of lose that edge. Whereas here you don't carry a Garchomp, and then again you're playing a much more aggro game. So yeah, that's the idea behind Scarflandrus. I do not recommend running it in anything but more offensive builds. So that's about it with Lando. Yeah, next one, Excadrill. Excadrill is very strong because you have Sandforce and Iron Air plus Airquake plus Rock Slide. Earthquake, Rapid Spin, and obviously this. A lot of people run Adamant. I think it's Adamant on the sample as well, where it's the Arches team, which this one. So back to the builder. This one is a Scarf Excadrill. It's also Adamant, which was fine when the what's it called, when the team was actually used, but nowadays you probably won't jolly anyway. Yeah, something like this. So why X here? Okay, so first off, you kind of need a Scarfer, and you could Scarf Landorus maybe, but then what do you use? Rocks Excadrill, that's a bit sad. Roster Anita, maybe, could be, but the whole idea is to use momentum generated by eject button among Us, Rotom, and Lando, and get in your Terrakion and do a lot of damage. And once Terrakion has spent its firepower, say, you kill maybe a Mon and Alf, and then you sacrifice it or whatever, and then Escalade cleans up, and you cannot do it any other way with this 6, because let's say you can maybe make a case for saying Scarf Terrakion is worse than Escadrille, but if you do that, your team becomes way too slow and gets preyed on too hard by their psychics. Unless you play perfectly with Tyranitar, and even then, I'm not sure you can pull it off. Because while Swords and Scepter is great at killing stuff, it's also a bit too slow, so nowadays it kind of struggles doing it. And of course, Scarf Landorus is okay, but this team does not actually play as fast as the other one I was showing you. It does play quite fast, but you have to consider what switches into each of these mons, right? So if you run Scarf Landorus, say, and U-turn and a Skarmory comes in, what do? You go Rotom Wash? Yeah, maybe, sure, but you're taking rocks and sand and who knows what else. You can go Terrakion and click Close Combat. Yes, sure, that's very much a possibility. But do you need Scarf Lando to do that? Like, Scarfing Lando yet wouldn't benefit the team as much because it doesn't play that well of the kind of structures that are very weak to Terrakion. Or to say it better, they don't have that strong of offensive synergy beyond the U-turn. But obviously, if you run leftovers and max health on Landorus, you get way more mileage out of U-turn from Landorus. And so I think this is the only reasonable arrangement for these mons. And of course, Scarfecca, decent late game cleaner. Probably make it jolly nowadays. People are getting greedy again with Volcarona. And of course, once a few K pieces have been weakened, you can maybe manage a Iron Edge sweep late game. And even if you don't, it's also okay to spin with Scarfescary. It's not really a spinner, right, when you run this set, but it's a decent emergency button that could give your Terrakion one more entry, and then, they play off each other around pretty well, I would say. So Escadrille Scarf, um, you can run it in teams like this one. I think you want another strong physical attacker to open up things for it, and then that's about it, I would say. And don't treat it as a spinner. Treat it as a late game cleaner who may or may not be able to spin once to save you from losing. Okay. Latios. Okay, Scarf Latios is an interesting one. Not as popular nowadays. People gravitate towards other Scarfers, even in teams that historically have always used Scarf Latios. But it's still more than fine and more than usable. So, for example, we have a Scarf Latios here on this sample team. The sample team is a bit on the older side, like it survived the latest renovations of sample team. So you could argue that this is a bit of an older build, which will be correct, but it's still more than fine for Scarf Latios. Because it's very fast and it gives you better revenge killing than just about everything else. Main issue with Latios as a choice scarf user is that it's kind of weak and obviously very pursuit prone, so you need to be very careful in the mirror when you want to whip out your Latios. But if you're playing against, say, hyper offense, Latios is pretty strong. There, you can drop Draco for almost free, or you bait in Jirachi for free and just double to your Ferrothorn, and you kind of can do the same without the scarf, but with your scarf you always have a button out against, say, I don't know, Dragonite, for example, or even, I don't know, even say something like Swords and Scarchomp, because Zam does not kill it in one. Keldeo, this guy does not have a nice move, and Landorus is kind of doesn't win the 1v1 to say the least. Rain is also a big fan of Scarlatius. I'm not sure people use it that much anymore. I think we are going back to the OG Scarfcalio. I believe at least one of these samples has to be Scarflatius, right? The U21. This team is also kind of old. Mm. But still, I think there's space for Scarflatius on these builds. Although, to be fair, Rain is in a tough spot at the moment. It's climbing back up a little bit. I think we are starting to figure out how to not instantly lose to a Life or Balakazam. Actually, Life or Balakazam might be easier to beat for Rain than Sash. Because, of course, Surfing Rain should one hit KO, and so you can just revenge kill it eventually. And Sun does not really have that many good answers to Surf, Scarf Kelly, and Rain, unless they have Rimon at full health, which is kind of hard to achieve against Thunderous and friends. And so you want Scarflatius when, well, you want to go fast. That's it, really. Which is not necessary for many teams. In fact, if you build teams a certain way, you can even get away with running zero Scarf users, obviously. But that's very hard to do, and even then, like, having Scarf Latios on your team means you can always pull off something late game, even. You completely stop, for example, other Scarfers' potential sweeps. You always have a strong trick, which is quite important. And yeah, it's just a nice one to have on your team, even if it's not as popular nowadays. Anyway, next one is Keldeo. Keldeo you only see on Rain, and even the samples are well, not mostly, but this one is Rain. Keldeo. Not much to say about this guy. You run it with these friends. You can switch like 2 or 3 slots, but Politoad, Ferrothorn, Keldeo will always be there, and probably Latios and Thundurus as well. And then this sometimes is a Starmie. If you're feeling frisky, you don't really have better ways to build this, I think, or at least I cannot think of any. If you want to switch it up, you can go for the Scarf Girachi like this one, or the Scissor ones. This one also has Scarkeldeo with Choice Band Scissor, which is okay, but I'm not that big of a fan. I think it's kind of weak. I'd rather switch the boosting items around, so Scarf Scissor and Specs Keldeo. Problem then, of course, is that your team is very slow. And so you need to play perfectly against fast threats, because the best you can do against, say, an Alakazam is just guard Scissor, and then you turn and or pursue it. And if you turn and they switch out, you're kind of in a sticky situation. Well, they're not really in a sticky situation, but the next time Zam comes in, it will get another kill, and then it starts getting very hard to win. And conversely, if you pursue it and Zam stays in and you die, it's just the game is gone. And this is why I'm not a fan of this kind of reigns anyway. Scarfracci, sure. I mean, we'll talk about Scarfracci in a second, so. Right, and there it is. Okay. If you ask a lot of people who play Black and White a lot nowadays, they will tell you that this is the one mon that is better at running a choice card than any other set. So going back to my previous points, right? You can scarf Landorus and scarf Exodus and scarf Latios and scarf Kelde, right? But all of these would rather not be scarfed, or not really that. It's just that Scarf is not their best set. It works, and in fact, they work very well as Scarfers, or they wouldn't be in this list, and they wouldn't be so popular. But other sets they run are, for the most part, just straight up better. Now, they might not be the best for the team. They might not always work consistently or whatever you want, but surely if you have a Keldo set that's not Scarf, you can almost guarantee it will do a lot in any given game. Say a Calm Mindset, or even just for attacks, spells, specs, whatever you want. Same goes for Escalade, same goes for Landorus. Like, they all have precise cons to using them as Scarfers, and sometimes, if not most of the times, they would rather be doing something else than being your choice Scarf user. The same does not apply to Jirachi, and this is something that, for example, Peng mentions a lot, or used to mention. He probably still thinks that, but he was a prophet for this one, so shout out Peng. So Jirachi has other sets. I use them sometimes, but this one is definitely the best Jirachi set. Like, just choice Scarf U-turn, Healing Wish, Trick, Ice Punch. Like, I mean, obviously you can run Iron Head over one of the two psychic moves here, but you know the gist. And also, of course, you can have AV whatever you want. A lot of people like more special defensive ones. And so the idea here is that you switch into Alakazam or Latios and you turn grab momentum. This is why this guy is very popular in hyper offense teams, by the way. This guy, yeah. So if you run something like this, it's fine. It's Jirchi's best set. The other Jirchi sets are very niche. The belt one maybe is, or just leftovers, but for attacks. Why is black belt and expert belt exactly the same? Expert belt has those threads coming out. Okay, sure. Like, something like this, okay. I don't even know what the hell do you run. Like, this seems, I don't know. Actually, I stole I grabbed the sample, so let's see, because this team has a, I don't know, Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Thunder, Max Attack. Yeah, like, this is probably Jirachi's second most used set, and it's okay, but I'm not a fan. I think it struggles a bit in black and white in general, and also it's just not as good as Scarf. Like, that's it. That's the whole point. Another set you will see sometimes is a special defensive one, like a run on this team, but again, it's not remotely as useful or as versatile or in general as nice as this one. Because this one just switches in on a couple of very annoying guys and just uters out, grabs momentum, and forces them out, most importantly, and that's very useful in a lot of cases. You'll mostly see this in either Rain or Hyper Offense, of course. We can see it here. So this one, the Keldeo one, see Scarfracci plus the Keldeo. Let me check if it's got a EV spread that we can steal. Oh, this is not that bulky, this is more offensive. It's even adamant one. Okay, sure. That's an idea. And let's see. Let's go back and steal another, like this one, let's say. Back to the builder. And we steal this. And let's see if the Rachi set is a bit. Yeah, this is slightly big. Oh, this is way bigger actually. But yeah, the idea behind this kind of Jirachi set is that, you do your revenge killing duty pretty well. You still can revenge kill, say, Dragonite at +1, obviously as worse than Garchomp, unless they have the dreaded Yachiberry. Scarface move is always nice in black and white. And then you have U-turn as well, which grabs momentum against something like this team. If you Treco Derachi, you do, I don't know, this spec, so it will do a lot, even if you're running like max HP. Let's say you do 38-40%, something like that, head calc. And then you turn out, you grab momentum, and grabbing momentum once or twice is more than enough for hyper offense teams to overwhelm this kind of build. And then you also have another nice thing about Scarfraci in the team, like over its other sets, is that you can have Anguish, for example, which is you can run it on other sets. Of course, this guy learns some billion moves. So if you were to run a set like this, which I believe was someone used somewhere in a tournament once or twice, I mean, you can run this. I don't even know if this is the correct set, but it's very customizable. But as a Scarfer, especially, you can U-turn grab momentum a couple of times. You will take a lot of damage in the process. Because, I don't know, there's maybe rocks, maybe even spikes, perhaps a Ferrothorn, so Iron Barbs, Rough Skin from Garchomp, and what have you. Is this? It's two more. Okay. So if you run something like this, you can get a lot of done. And then obviously late game, maybe sometimes you can get an Iron Head sweep, although that's usually a mega last resort, especially since you're running 70 attack EVs. But this is probably this is the only mon whose Scarf set is its best set. Like, and it's not even close. Like the other ones, again, they're good Scarfers. They work in a lot of teams, but running them non-Scarf makes them better usually, unless again in some teams, like under some circumstances. But I would rather not be running Scarf, right? It's just a necessary evil. As for Rachi, he'd rather run Scarf than anything else. That's it. That's the whole point of Jirachi. And you will, like, and that's why it's so prominent in hyper offense. You can drop the pretense of running a billion priorities, which forces you to run Prelum, for example, which is okay, but not the best one. And Scizor, again, is decent, but again, these mons can revenge kill things, but obviously you would rather be boosting or dealing mad damage with them, not using Brennan as a revenge killer. You lock yourself into Mach Puncher, then what? Yeah, fantastic. But if it's not late game sweeping, you're kind of tossed your Brennan because you can't not really switch around with this. Also, hyper offense teams like Smurf being historically weak to Zam make the U-turn Scarfraci even more interesting to these teams because now they actually have a way to not instantly lose to Akazam. And Rain also has kind of the same problem. Like, look at these six. They're all kind of weak to Zam. Your only Psychic Resist, well, one dies to Focus Blast, two also takes a lot from HP Fire unless Rain is up, and three, if you're losing the Weather War, you have to go Politoed on the Zam, and that's let's say that Politoed does not like taking that much damage from Zam. And Sand teams don't need a Jirachi because they have Tyranitar usually, and also they have their own Scarfer, maybe sometimes it's Lando, or they don't have monsters that all instantly die to them, which is hard to say for Rain and Hyper Offense, and so that explains why Jirachi is still probably the most used Scarfer right now. If it's not, it's just because Sand is the most popular playstyle, but Sand can run several Scarfers, or at least two. Which are these two fellas? Escriel and Lando. Actually, three, Latios too, of course. And then there's the fake Scarfer, such that. But the other playstyles are not really forced to run Jirachi. Of course, there's Keldeo and Scizor, but it's just a nice to have. Yeah, you can carry Scarf in Rain if you're about alive, though I don't know why you would do that. But I mean, I've seen it happen, and did it work? Yeah, so let's not discount it. But yeah, so should you run a choice scarf user every game? No, you can definitely get away without one. And some sample teams, well, I mean, obviously, some stall teams like this one do not have a choice scarf user, and you can kind of see why. This one has a fake scarfer in Tyranitar. This one I don't even want to see what evil concoction this was, but I don't know why this team is here. This team has Zam, I believe, so it's got a fake Scarfer. This team has Scarf Chomp and Scarf Tyranitar, so this went all in on the opposite way. But yeah, you don't necessarily need a choice scarf because you can play in a way that blocks your opponent from boosting up and winning. That said, some mons are very hard to position against. Think Dragonite, right? It's very hard to prevent Dragonite from getting a Dragon Dance up, no matter what you do, in a lot of scenarios. Whereas something like Volcarona, it's a bit easier, though obviously not free by any means, but that's a possibility. Or even something like Alakazam, for example. They're very hard to deal with sometimes without a choice confuser, so you have to be a bit careful. Sometimes you can run more than one scarf user. It works. You're losing firepower, but you can bluff things, and you just sometimes your opponent will be like, "Oh, I killed their scarfer, so this other guy surely is not scarf, right?" And then you reveal the second scarf and get a surprise kill, and that might just win you the game. More than two, I mean, we're getting into meme territory. You can run 6 choice scarves for all I care, but I don't recommend it personally. It's a bit too much. And you can obviously avoid the scarves. Well, beyond playing well, positioning well, which is always dependent on a million factors, you can also run priorities. But priorities are not really that common nowadays in black and white. The mons that are strong priority users historically, the only one that you see a lot of is Dragonite. Scizor sometimes, yeah, but it's also often Scarf, so that kills kind of the idea. Brelon drop off the face of the earth. Conkeldurr, I mean, yeah, sometimes you have Mach punch on Kong, but it's not that powerful at +0. Scarf Garchomp, I mean, sure, why not? Rain priorities, nobody runs Azumarill anymore, and Scizor, yeah, I guess there's that guy, Mamoswine. Mamoswine Rain is a bit, let's say, obsolete, or at least that's Rain itself is not doing best, and then you had a Mamoswine who fell off massively, and yeah, it just doesn't. It works sometimes, but I don't recommend it. Sun priority is not really. It's very rare to have a Sun team with priorities. Does this count as a Sun team? It's got Tyranitar, so the Sun is on the team. I guess there's Quick Attack Terrakion, but um, let's say it's not strong enough, obviously. Yeah, so use Choice Scarf? Yes, please. Next person who posts black and white and says, Volcarona keeps whipping me and I keep losing 6-0 to Volcarona. And then like, okay, show me your team and or your replay. And they like, oh yeah, I have Adamant Scarf Escadrille. I'm like, yeah, of course you lost. No wonder. How about you run a Choice Scarf user that can revenge kill Volcarona, since he obviously cannot stop it from dancing. And if you can't, you better have another answer, maybe one that beats it even if it's a +1. And so yeah, that's very annoying to read, by the way. It's just stupid. Because there's so many things that you can do to revenge kill Volcarona, even a +1. And then people want to run a team like this with Adamant Escadrille, which was fine when this team started gaining traction, but nowadays you definitely need Jolly on Escadrille. And that's fine, because if the Volcarona is timid, you have your Tyranitar, and yeah, it will kill your Escadrille and maul your Tyranitar, but that's better than losing turn 0, right? You also have a Terrakion actually, so this team isn't even too weak to walk anyway, no matter what the set. Other Scarfers, sometimes Scarf Kieran Black pops up, it's fine, but it's very hard to fit into a lot of teams, so I don't really want to go over it too much. You can run it in like a Hail of Fence or in general, just sometimes you just want to click a 500 attack outrage, right? And Scarf Black is also pretty good at cleaning up, because it's just fast enough to speed Landorus and Escadrille. So late game you can, if they're chipped, you can just outrage and just clean up teams like this one, for example. Like Scarf Kid and Black against this team, for example, it's kind of a disaster for the Sun team. But even the other Saiyans, like once Ferrothorn is dead, Scarf Kid and Black kind of owns them unless you have Scarflatios. So hey, we're going back to why Scarflatios is still a good idea to run. This team also gets annihilated by Scarf Kieran Black, by the way. Your resist is a minus defense Jirachi with 0 investment. The same kind of goes for Rain, right? They have Ferrothorn and then a lot of things that take a billion damage. Kind of the same year, by the way. Like, these teams all kind of weak to Scarf Kieran Black. And so maybe consider it for the next time. Of course, not as obvious. Jirachi here often runs a lot of health, so and Conkelder's big enough to not die in one, which is kind of annoying, but I'm assuming that Conk will be lowish since we are playing hyper offense, right? Yeah, that's a fun idea for your next build. Try out Scarf Back. Because as you can see from all of this, a lot of these teams kind of fall to it. Other funny scarfers that I haven't mentioned, I think Itran is a decent scarfer. On this team, it's not scarf, it's like balloon flame charge or whatever nonsense. Let me check. Oh man, I'm about to get hungry, am I not? I'm getting rage baited. Watch, watch, watch. This is going to be a stupid Itran set. Yep. Okay, not that angry at this set. It's okay. If you run this, I hope you lose every game by missing Magma Storm. Deserved, by the way. Anyway, Scarfitran, interesting pick. I like most other Scarfers that I talked about. Let's add a Hitran here. In Sun, you probably run this just only in Sun. So unlike Lando and even Latios, and to an extent Exca, Hitran saves you better against, say, Dragon Death Dragonite, because it will tank extreme speed with much more ease than everything else. Escadrille doesn't take that much either, so I guess there's that. But Latios and Landorus, they can die to a +1 Dragonite if they are a little bit cheap. This guy can be chipped a little bit more. Main problem is it's a bit slow, but it lets you load a Scarfer that's slower than Volcarona without instantly losing to Volcarona. I mean, if you face, okay, if you're running Etran as a Scarfer and your opponent is running HP Ground Volcarona in 2025, here's what you do, okay? Pretend you're at a VGC event, okay? You have two options here. One, toss the switch into your opponent's jawline and get banned from live from circuit, which I would respect that. Or two, you just turn off the switch, stand up, and give your opponent a handshake and be like, okay, you were just better at video game, man. I'm out. The nice thing about Scarfitran, well, it's got a nice set of resists, and it can revenge kill a lot of stuff in a pretty solid manner, rather, sorry. And you can get a lot of surprise value out of it. Fire types and fire resists, even on big teams, I mean, it's always the same three guys, right? Okay, if you load a Scarfitran against Rain, well, it's you're playing with 5 mods, but I mean, that's just life. However, against Sand, you can often get a lot of value out of Featron. I mean, I'm just spitballing here. Maybe it sucks, but I think it's good enough to be at least considered. Probably Fire Blast, Ice Move, or Dragon Pulse. If you do this, you do this. And then last move, I don't know, Cannon or Boom, maybe. Something like this. I think you want Ice. If anything, because Dragonite and Garchomp exist. But Pulse Grass is also fine. Power, probably not. If you're scared of Volcarona, you can even Rock Slide. I mean, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? But yeah, this is another option. Any other mon that Scarf could work well on? Probably there's a few. Yeah. We used to use this guy a decent amount. So you would run a Dragon spam team with the usual suspects, right? Pure and Black Band, this guy with the balloon, and then you be Scarf, of course, Moxie, Chomp, Yachi, and I don't know, team like this maybe, and you'll be the rocker, and you'll be Scarf, Outrage, and you will try to kill things, and then late games with Moxie, which maybe happened twice in the history of this video game, but that never stopped anyone from trying for like 10 years. And now nobody runs Dragon Mag anymore, which probably positive. This already makes it better, likely. But yeah, no, this guy. We see some teams with Dragons. Okay, I'm not gonna bother with this. So back to the sample, because I just remember the last mon I want to mention here, and then the video's been quite long enough already. So a team like this one, sometimes you will see Scarfy Dragon in Latios spot. By the way, let me check. I mean, I'm assuming it's Sash Zam and Specs Latios, right? Okay, but some people will be like, you know what? I'm going to run Life of Zam. Yeah, let's get this set. I don't care. And then replace Latios with a Dragon. And Scarfit, you turn. I assume something like this. Commit here. Yeah, sure. A thing like this, you will see it pop up every now and then. It's, I mean, I think these guys shouldn't be used at all, but if you really want to, this is definitely a Scarfer. It's got U-turn. It's immune to Psychic, which is pretty nice, because it makes Alakazam second guess what he wants to think against several members of this team. It also resists Grass Knot, and just don't get Force Blasted. That's how you win with this guy. And of course, it's Spike's immune, which isn't something I didn't really mention talking about Scarfers, but well, only two of these really as Spike's immune anyway, so whatever. But yeah, how this was helpful, and I have to clean up my builder because look at all these god awful teams, man. Oh yeah, much better. But yeah, see you next time.